Where is the weirdest place you've ever fallen asleep? I fell asleep one time waiting before a medical procedure. They had to wake me up so that I could sign paperwork permitting them to put me to sleep. Oh, the irony. On film sets. First time we were sat in a comfy auditorium for hours on end, fake clapping and laughing. One after another someone would doze off, and if an AD noticed, they'd wake us up, unless the person was quiet enough and the others were making enough noise. During a particular slow turnover I dozed off. And during this period of my life I was a bit phlegmy, so I didn't realize my head had rocked back and I was snoring loud. Eventually when I came to, the crew was still doing adjustments. I remember this girl's face as she looked up at me with the most appalled look on her face. I must have been snoring badly. Second time this happened, it was very unexpected. I was playing a refugee in a tent with other extras. The director had to place me further away from the others and turn me away from the camera because of how I looked. I lay there awake but pretending to be unconscious for the first and second take. I then wake after who knows how long to clapping and an AD praising us. And that's a wrap, guys. My friend on set, another extra, came up to me to say that I didn't move an inch even when he tried to tell me jokes. We had just clicked on set and were having a lot of fun that day. I had to ask him how long has it been since we started rolling and find out that it's been a good 3 to 4 hours. Easiest paycheck I have or will make in my life. In the back of an ambulance. I'm the paramedic. In a crawl space when I was a technician for a laboratory. On a hedge at the end my road. Dad wasn't too pleased at driving past his pissed up son sleeping in a hedge on his way to work. In the office of a funeral director I was making a sales call to. Years later it dawned on me that he probably thought I would just leave if he made me wait forever. Underneath the car while doing an oil change. On the bus. Standing up. In my defense, it was a traffic jam and I hadn't slept the previous night. Wiz Khalifa concert. Everyone was so high. I fell asleep for a few minutes standing up and the crowd was so thick I didn't even fall over. In college, I took a cognitive neuroscience course that involved designed experiments to be carried out in an MRI and how to analyze the brain images afterwards. As part of the course, we all carried out our studies, and I volunteered to be a participant for a few. When I went to get in the MRI, the tech said I couldn't wear my sweatshirt in due to the metal near the aglets, so she got me a blanket to keep warm, and to keep my head propped at the right angle. They gave me a stack of pillows. I definitely unintentionally messed with someone's data by falling asleep mid-study. When I was a kid, like 5 or 6, there was a tree in the front yard I really liked climbing. There was a branch perfectly shaped for little me to lie down on. Early one morning, I woke up and decided to take my sleeping bag up the tree and went back to sleep. Okay, that sounds lovely. Homemade tree hammock. On the deck of a trawler, with a mix of seawater, fish guts, and crude oil lapping against my makeshift bed. Techno party with my head on top of a massive speaker. On a tractor while plowing a field. I was doing night shifts during the summer and decided to get some extra hours in during the day, so I was tired when doing my actual shift. I switched on the tractor's GPS and set it to give me a signal 50 meters before the field ended to wake me up to turn around. The fields were about 1,200 meters long, so I'd get about 10 minutes of sleep before having to turn around again. Think how surreal it would be for someone standing on the edge of the field to watch a tractor plowing the ground with a sleeping tractorist inside. During a job interview, he actually had to shake me awake. Weirder yet, I still got the job. You were hired for that power move. I fell asleep while marching to school. I was enlisted in the Air Force, and once you graduate boot camp, you go to your school to learn about your job. Well, I stayed up all night studying for a test. And I was so tired that I fell asleep while marching to the schoolhouse. And I somehow managed to stay in a straight line, keep pace, and stay in step with everyone. Bathroom floors. Standing up. In the middle of eating. I have narcolepsy, so I can seat pretty much anywhere. Not always by choice. I volunteered at the local firehouse when I was a teen, early 20s. We got a call one night on the interstate, which was a 20-minute drive. Sick me decided to close my eyes thinking I would wake up when the sirens stopped. I woke up when the truck pulled back in the station and turned off with everyone laughing at me. While doing a school presentation, literally on someone else's wife's shoulder. I feel like there's a story there. I was 19 going somewhere in a bus, this woman in her late 20s Saturday beside me. I didn't know when I had started sleeping on her shoulders. Woke up to her giggles. Kind of her to become my pillow. I once fell asleep standing up. During high school I had the weirdest relationship with sleep and ended up spending more time in class asleep than awake. One day after not having slept for a few nights in a row I just passed out during standing up. We were waiting for instructions. I blinked, and suddenly everyone was out in the field doing stuff and I was alone. Teacher seen me come to shortly after and informs me that class is over in a few minutes and to just go ahead and get changed again. Reportedly I snored. I usually didn't in the classroom. One time I also fell asleep on the sidewalk outside my dentist's office. I had gotten up way earlier than I had needed to. I had to bus there. Had 3 hours to kill, and not much money to get breakfast or something. So I went and sat down on some concrete fixtures that made a decent improvised seat. Got annoyed at myself for forgetting to charge my phone, and started changing my seated position frequently before eventually dozing off laying down. Thankfully I awoke, but it was to a siren. I was wondering what was going on when a firefighter started talking to me. Somebody thought I was a body or a passed out homeless person. Whoops. Made it to my dentist on time and resolved to never be that early to an appointment ever again. One night, for no particular reason, I was feeling extremely anxious. My mother-in-law offered me a Xanax. It was about 7 p.m. and a few days before Christmas. We were at her house doing the family thing. I took the Xanax and after about 15 minutes started feeling relatively calm. Not really thinking about it, I grabbed a beer from my father-in-law, who didn't know I'd taken a Xanax. Finished it. Decided to have one more. I went outside to smoke and was lying across the hood of my car. In retrospect, I was already pretty out of it. I don't normally lay on cars. Anyway, I finished smoking and turned on my iPad and just started doodling while lying back, kinda propped up by the windshield. That's all I remember. The next thing I knew it was after midnight. My iPad was lying in the driveway, shattered, and my mother-in-law and wife were shaking me awake in a total panic. Apparently I straight passed out mid-sketch and dropped my iPad and just sat there in their front yard, fully unconscious, laying across my car. Don't drink if you take Xanax, kids. This post is a narcoleptic's wet dream. If slept on the steps of the Opera House in Sydney, in the bathroom of my local pub 3 hours 3 beers, under the car, whilst milking cows on numerous occasions, Kmart changing room, traveling 35 miles per hour on a quad bike. Those are a few. At the moment my weird place is on the floor in our hallway. My client's house in his room while standing up with a roll of TP in my hands. I woke up really confused. To clarify, I'm a personal assistant and the series of events leading up to that moment was I'd spent about 2 weeks working at a hospital as an assistant and also personal assistant at an older man's home. My schedule was back to back and I only slept about an hour to 2 hours at my house, so I was exhausted and ended up falling asleep standing up waiting for my client to tell me how he was feeling. Had to wait for him to get a feel for the equipment. The toilet paper is a mystery, though I honestly don't remember when I picked it up or why. Buddy and I went to an amusement park. Roller coaster were the main thing we went for. Then we got in line for one, and as we sat down in the seat and got strapped in, a couple got pulled off to the side because they had a camera out. You aren't allowed to film or take pictures on roller coasters where I'm from, so security was called and the ride was delayed. So I sat there and turned to my friend and say, "Yo Chris, wake me when the ride starts." I said it as a joke. He laughed. And then I leaned back and closed my eyes. Then I was falling. The coaster has started and I actually fell asleep. I woke up on the first hill, but I'm still amazed I actually fell asleep. I only ask because as I type this, I can hear my roommate snoring from his seat on the toilet. At the cinema, it was that Maze Runner movie. My girlfriend was all over it. I didn't like it personally. Coffin. While tying my shoes. At the dentist in the middle of drilling without any anesthesia. Woke up to dentist trying to tell me to open my mouth more. For those wondering why no anesthesia, I have very high pain tolerance and I dislike how local anesthesia feels. That's not what you want to be hearing when waking up. At a Van Halen concert in the 90s. Laid down on the grass in the open seating area. Next thing I knew, the concert was over and my friends were waking me up so we could leave. It was on a train. However, the circumstances were weird. However, I fell asleep while viewing an AskReddit thread about masturbating. When I woke up, the title of the thread was visible and I'm pretty sure the guy next to me saw what I was looking at. Not weird but dangerous. When I was still in high school, I used to work a Starbucks and would open at 4 a.m. so I'd have to get up around 3 a.m. to drive there. Well, there were some days where I didn't get to bed on time, so while driving, I'd close my eyes and count to 3 and then open and correct my driving if I had veered of my lane, and repeat. My logic was, no way could I veer off that bad in 3 seconds. Mind you, that early there really isn't anyone on the road. Well, there was one time I counted to 3 and my eyes would just not open until it was almost too late. Nothing bad happened, but I pulled over, called work and said I'd be 5 minutes late. Took a nap on the side of the highway and went to work. I had just spent 16 hours getting through the border from Mongolia to Russia. By the time I got through, it was about 6 a.m. and the sun was rising. I drove 1 kilometer down the road, got out of my car and fell asleep next to it. When I woke up a few hours later, I saw a man on horseback coming my way through a field. He stopped and asked me, "What time is it?" I told him the time and he took off at full pace back the way he came. Did a full 7 hours under a marble bench at the Louvre. I was 11. It was Bastille Day. They had air conditioning. I went to a party and slept in the train on the way back home. But my friend constantly was waking me up. I would be mad if he did that. So when the train stopped at the last station, he left without me, drunk, and I did not really know him. So this nice cute lady waked me up when the train was empty. I thought it was my friend, so I yelled something mad and she walked away. 5 seconds later I realized it wasn't my friend and I felt so bad. During an exam. Only thing that comes to mind is on top of a boat's diesel engine. The vibration numbed me and the casing was warm to the touch. I remember once being woken up by my friends trying to drag me out from underneath a tractor the morning after a party. During sex. But it turned out I was asleep the whole time and it was actually a dream. I was an hour early for my appointment in London, and there was a nice park outside the building. It was a beautiful sunny day, and I sat in the long, soft grass, ate my lunch and read my book. I finished my book and I still had 45 minutes or so to wait. I also have chronic fatigue and no sense. So I laid down and slept. Lovely nap. 10 out of 10 would recommend. I fell asleep during my wedding. Pretty much the moment we sat down waiting to do our vows and wrap up the ceremony part of the wedding. I fell asleep multiple times while sitting there. Now it's not because I don't respect my wife. She pretty much died laughing when we went to eat and talk to people. She always thinks that shit is funny. I have various illnesses. Physical and mental. I was on meds at the time. I worked roofing with my fill and I am not a morning person at all. I've always had the graveyard schedule since I was a child. I've never been able to wake up in the morning without feeling sick. It was a Christian and Mexican wedding. As in, everything is in Spanish besides my vows. I also don't speak Spanish. I can only understand it sometimes. The ceremony was so long. It was basically them talking about the Bible for a good hour or so. So I dozed off multiple times. For a while at each time. I didn't feel bad at all. My wife didn't even want to do a church wedding because we both dislike religion and church a lot. We only did it because her dad said that he'd only pay for it. He was the one who insisted we get married since we live with him. But he said he'd give us $5,000 for our honeymoon, which he never did. To this day I don't remember the ceremony at all besides our vows. My couch is younger me. I swear it has teleportation abilities. I always end up in my bed when I sleep on it. It was super late and I was going down on my ex-girlfriend. I was bobbing my head and eventually just leaned against her thigh falling asleep. On my ambulance stretcher, former paramedic, I was a student at the time, and my crew immediately commented on how many people had probably died on it. It gave me pause, for about 2 seconds. Then I went to sleep. Night shift can be brutal. I slept on the floor of my buddy's room. The weird part though was he was getting action in his bed, and our other friend was getting action in his walk-in closet. So I fell asleep with his shooting earmuffs on. So I was in the US and I was taking a cheap-ass night bus to Chicago alone. I was happy to get 2 seats for myself since no one showed up. But on the gas station stop, this huge black guy asked me if he can sit next to me since they are 2 and don't fit. I agreed. He was so big that he almost took half of my seat as well. The easiest way to get comfortable was to just put my head on his belly. So I did it. He hugged me almost sexually. We fell asleep like this until 2 seats close to each other freed and he left to sit there without saying a word. I fell asleep standing up on the train. I woke up when the train stopped. But I didn't. One time as a little kid I fell asleep while playing in my room in the middle of the day. I woke up on my knees with my head resting at a weird angle on the bed. Don't even remember feeling tired, and I didn't usually take naps as a kid. But for whatever reason this particular day I just passed the out halfway on the floor. Another time I was stretching and warming up for an MMA fight like an hour before my match. And I just kinda passed out on the warm-up mats. My corner man is like, hey, I come to, and he goes, are you kidding me? Did you actually just fall asleep in front of laptop when at work? I think everyone has at one point or another in office jobs when work is slow, or when it's mind-numbingly boring.